Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so you've given us some really interesting material today. It's all focused on business coaching, specifically insights from Tony Feghali.
Hmm.
And what we really want to dig into for you listening is this specific question. According to Feghali, when is business coaching actually most valuable?
Right, because there's this common idea, isn't there, that, coaching is something you look at later.
Yeah, like once the business is kind of up and running, products working, teams in place, maybe you've got revenue, then you think about coaching.
Exactly. It's often seen as optimizing something that's already established, like fine-tuning for the next level, almost like a premium add-on.
But Feghali really pushes back on that timeline, doesn't he?
It does, yeah.
He points out that loads of entrepreneurs have this not yet mentality. Coaching is for, later after the initial chaos, not for right now when things are messy.
And that's a really crucial point he makes. He basically argues that the time when you're deep in that figuring it out phase, that's actually prime time.
What does he mean by figuring it out? Like the really early stuff?
Well, yeah, when the product maybe isn't quite there yet, it's a bit half-baked. Maybe your customers are still a bit, confused about what you do.
Okay.
And your team's looking to you for direction, but maybe you, the founder, are feeling a bit lost yourself, kind of navigating in the fog. That's the moment he highlights.
That paints a very different picture from the, polished executive getting coached. It sounds much more raw.
It is. It's about that messy middle. And he suggests, interestingly, that very early on, maybe you need that rah-rah motivation, that initial push.
Right, get things going.
But as you transition into this figuring it out stage, the need shifts. It becomes less about just motivation and much more about gaining clarity.
Clarity. Okay, so clarity on what exactly?
Clarity on the vision, the strategy, and critically, the decisions you have to make.
And he really hammers this point home, doesn't he? That businesses don't just run on grand strategies. They run on the day-to-day decisions made by the leaders.
Absolutely. And Feghali points out that behind every single one of those decisions, there's usually a founder, grappling with all sorts of internal stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, weighing risks, trying to read the signals from the market, which are often, let's be honest, pretty unclear, and just trying to keep everything aligned with that original vision while everything around them is constantly changing. It's a huge mental load.
He even lists some specific panics and crises that sound painfully familiar if you've ever built anything.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Like the product market fit panic, that desperate search, or the classic hiring too fast and firing too slow trap.
Been right down there.
And even things like burnout that gets disguised as just hustle culture.
That's a big one. And he also mentions pressure from investors pushing for growth, maybe co-founder tensions bubbling up.
Yeah, or the team not quite getting the new direction you're tripping to take.
And maybe that a deeper feeling, I built this whole thing, but it doesn't really feel like me anymore. Crisis. It's almost existential.
Wow. And Feghali's take is that these aren't just like operational hiccups you fix with a new process.
Not primarily, no. He argues they often boil down to a lack of leadership clarity. It's about the leader's internal compass and ability to navigate, not just the external strategy.
Okay, so if that's the problem, then what does coaching look like in that context, according to him? How does it help with that clarity?
He describes it as creating a dedicated space, a clear, judgment-free zone for the leader to just think, to decide, and ultimately to lead with, less noise and more integrity.
So it's not about getting answers from the coach.
No, definitely not. He stresses it's distinct from, say, consulting or even mentoring in that way. It's about the coach asking the right questions, the powerful questions you probably aren't asking yourself when you're stuck in the day-to-day grind.
Can you give some examples of those kinds of questions he suggests?
Sure. They're often quite fundamental, actually, like what are you really building here and who is it actually for? Simple, but easy to lose sight of.
Yeah, definitely.
Or, are the decisions you're making actually aligned with your business model? And, importantly, with your own personal bandwidth. That hits on sustainability.
That's a good one. Stops you stretching too thin.
Exactly. And questions like, is this opportunity really about scaling the core business, or is it just a shiny distraction? Helps with focus. And a really interesting one, what does enough actually look like for you? Which forces you to think about your personal definition of success, not just chasing endless growth.
That feels quite deep. It connects the business back to the person.
It does. And maybe the most probing, how much of your business right now is running on fear versus how much is running on genuine conviction?
Oof. That's a tough one to answer, honestly.
Right. And Feghali's point is when you're wrestling with these kinds of fundamental issues, just, surface level tips or generic advice isn't going to cut it.
So his argument is basically don't wait until things are polished.
Yeah, that's one of the big mistakes he sees. People
Okay.
wait too long. They think coaching is for when the business is like ready or investable.
And what's the downside of waiting, according to him?
Well, the risk is that coaching then becomes more about cleanup. It's reactive. You're bringing someone in because you're overwhelmed or burnt out or things are already going sideways.
Instead of being proactive support.
Exactly. He uses this great analogy. Wise leaders get a co-pilot before the really thick fog rolls in,
Yeah.
not after they're already lost in it.
I like that. It reframes it as a tool for navigation, not just rescue.
Precisely.
Hmm.
And he gives some really practical, concrete examples of what this early coaching actually helps with. It's not just abstract talk.
Okay, like what kind of practical things?
It could be something like dedicating structured time, maybe with the coach, to really think through a crucial hiring decision away from all the usual noise.
Right, getting that focus.
Or finding the clarity and, frankly, the courage to say no to opportunities that seem tempting but don't actually fit the core mission.
That's hard to do.
Very. Or proactively dealing with those early signs of tension with the co-founder before it poisons the well.
Getting ahead of the conflict.
Yeah. Or taking a proper step back to rebuild your pricing model based on the real value you provide, not just what competitors are doing. Or even just pausing everything to realign everyone on the core problem you're trying to solve.
It sounds like it creates space for the hard but necessary thinking.
That's exactly it. And he makes this point that coaching can be the one safe space where a founder can actually admit, you know what, I don't really know what I'm doing right now, without fear of judgment.
And that vulnerability is key.
He believes that honesty, that admission, is often the crucial first step towards figuring things out and achieving real growth.
So boiling it down, when does Feghali say, you need this kind of coaching support? What are the triggers?
He gives a few clear indicators. One is simply when the growth of the company starts to outpace your own clarity as the leader. Things are moving faster than your ability to process and direct them effectively.
Okay, that makes sense. Feeling overwhelmed by momentum.
Another is when your team really needs clear direction, but you yourself feel like you need a sounding board, someone external, to help you process your own thoughts and challenges before you communicate them.
That feeling of needing to talk it through.
Also, just that sheer exhaustion from carrying the weight of all the big decisions completely alone.
The loneliness at the top kind of thing.
Yeah. And finally, a big one. When all the external noise advice from mentors, articles, investors, whatever, starts to drown out your own inner compass, your own conviction about what's right for the business.
Losing your own voice in the crowd.
Exactly. That's a major signal that you need a space to reconnect with your own clarity.
So to wrap it up, Feghali isn't saying a coach builds the company for you.
Not at all. The argument is that coaching helps you, the leader, navigate all that complexity with more conviction. It helps you make better, more aligned decisions.
And hopefully sleep a bit better at night.
That's definitely part of the implied benefit, yeah. Fewer sleepless nights wrestling with those big choices. It's fundamentally about getting clarity, ensuring alignment, and carving out that essential space for real leadership thinking.
Okay, so the big takeaway for you listening, based on Feghali's view, seems to be that this kind of business coaching isn't some luxury item for the future when everything's perfect.
Right. It's potentially a really valuable tool for right now for navigating the actual, often messy process of building something meaningful.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with, building on Feghali's ideas, thinking about the specific challenges you're facing in your own venture right now. Where could gaining that extra bit of clarity, that focused space for thinking he talks about, make the biggest difference for you today?